doesn't run. He walks, slow, deliberate, almost calm. Two bodies lie cold outside a Brentwood home, and before sunrise, America's most beloved athlete becomes its most wanted man. It is June 12, 1994. The air in Los Angeles is heavy, the streets quiet, the city asleep. At 12:10 a.m., a dog begins to howl, its paws wet and sticky. A neighbor, confused and half awake, steps outside with a flashlight. The beam of light cuts through the darkness, lands on the sidewalk, and freezes. There, on the ground, are two bodies. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman are dead. Blood everywhere, on the gate, on the concrete, on the path leading to the door. Nicole's throat has been cut so deep it almost severed her head. Her friend lies beside her, his hand shredded from trying to fight back. The silence after the discovery is deafening. Within hours, the Los Angeles Police Department arrives, and the investigation begins. Detectives walk the property in surgical gloves and whisper the same name to one another, O.J. Simpson. To the world, he is a legend, a football hero, actor, and smiling face of American success. To Nicole, he had been something else. Their marriage, once the picture of glamour, had turned into a cycle of fear and violence. Neighbors had heard the shouting. Police had been called more than once. Nicole had told friends she was terrified. Now she is dead, and every trace of evidence seems to point back to him. At Simpson's mansion on Rockingham Avenue, detectives find his white Ford Bronco parked awkwardly outside. On the driver's door, a smear of blood. Near the guest house, a single black leather glove, soaked and stiff. Another glove, its twin, lies back at the crime scene. Drops of blood lead up the driveway, through the entryway, and into the house. Inside, O.J. has a small, fresh cut on his left hand. He tells police he broke a glass in Chicago. The story sounds rehearsed. They take samples, blood from the car, from the glove, from the floor. In the crime lab, they compare the DNA. It matches. The probability that it belongs to anyone else is less than 1 in 170 million. The case seems airtight, but nothing about this story will be simple. O.J. Simpson has money, fame, and influence, and he knows the cameras are already waiting. On June 17th, when police issue a warrant for his arrest, he disappears. His lawyer calls the press, his friends panic, and then, in the middle of the afternoon, America sees it. A white Ford Bronco slowly moving down the freeway, dozens of police cars behind it. The driver is his friend, Al Cowlings. Simpson sits in the back seat with a gun to his head. Helicopters follow from above. Anchors whisper on live TV. For 2 hours, the chase unfolds in slow motion. People leave restaurants and bars to watch. Some cheer, some cry. 95 million viewers follow every second. It is not just a manhunt, it is theater. When the Bronco finally stops outside his home, police approach carefully. Simpson steps out, pale and sweating, and gives himself up. Inside the car, they find money, his passport, a fake beard, and a note that sounds almost like a goodbye. The next morning, his mugshot is on every front page. The caption reads, O.J. Simpson, charged with double murder. The trial begins in January 1995. The courtroom becomes a stage. O.J. sits at the defense table, expressionless, wearing perfectly tailored suits. Cameras broadcast every moment to the world. His legal team, quickly dubbed the Dream Team, includes Johnny Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, and Robert Shapiro, the most famous defense attorneys in America. The prosecution brings in DNA experts, crime scene photos, and timelines that seem impossible to argue with. But Cochran and his team know something powerful. The story is not only about evidence, it's about emotion, race, and doubt. They attack the credibility of the police. They paint Detective Mark Furman as a racist who planted evidence to frame Simpson. They argue that the LAPD contaminated samples and mishandled blood evidence. They repeat one idea again and again. If the police lied once, maybe they lied about everything. Then comes the glove. In one of the most unforgettable moments in courtroom history, prosecutors ask Simpson to try on the blood-soaked leather gloves found at the scene. They appear too small. Cochran turns to the jury and says, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." Outside the courthouse, Los Angeles divides in half. In some neighborhoods, people believe Simpson is guilty beyond question. In others, he is a symbol of a black man persecuted by a corrupt system. The television networks run non-stop coverage. The public cannot look away. Talk shows, comedians, and reporters feed on every detail: the Bronco, the glove, the 911 tapes, the tears of Nicole's mother in the gallery. Inside the jury room, the pressure builds. After 8 months of testimony, the jurors deliberate for just 4 hours. On October 3rd, they file back into the courtroom. The entire country stops. Offices pause. Schools wheel in televisions. The foreperson stands and reads the verdict: not guilty. Gasps fill the room. Simpson closes his eyes, then smiles. Outside, crowds erupt, some cheering, some screaming in anger. The nation is split clean down the middle. But the story does not end with the verdict. 2 years later, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman file a civil lawsuit against O.J. In that courtroom, the rules are different. The burden of proof is lower. The evidence is the same. The jury finds him liable for both deaths and orders him to pay $33.5 million in damages. Simpson insists he is innocent, but his image is shattered. He becomes a man haunted by the ghosts of his own fame. Over the years, the case becomes legend, a symbol of media obsession and racial division in America. Legal scholars still debate it. True crime documentaries replay the footage again and again: the blood trail, the chase, the glove, the moment the verdict is read. For many, it represents the moment when celebrity, crime, and television merged into one. O.J. Simpson lives a strange afterlife in the public eye. He writes a book titled "If I Did It," a hypothetical retelling that chills readers with its eerie tone. He faces new legal trouble in 2007 for armed robbery and spends nearly a decade in prison before being released in 2017. When he appears in interviews afterward, he smiles and talks about golf, denying the past as if it were someone else's life. But the shadow never fades. The image of that white Ford Bronco crawling down the freeway remains burned into American memory, a moment frozen in collective consciousness. The case changed how the media covers crime, how juries view evidence, and how the world sees fame. It became the blueprint for every true crime spectacle that followed. O.J. Simpson died in April 2024 at the age of 76 after a battle with cancer. When the news broke, headlines revisited the same photos: the football star running across a field in glory, the mugshot, the Bronco. Almost 30 years later, people were still arguing: was justice ever served? Did the system fail, or did it work exactly as it was designed to? The answer depends on who you ask. To some, he was a murderer who escaped punishment. To others, he was proof that a black man could finally beat a biased system. To everyone, he was a reminder of how fragile truth becomes when power, race, and fame collide. The night of June 12th still lingers in the collective imagination. The dog, the blood, the quiet street, the cold bodies under the California moon. It began as a brutal crime, but ended something bigger, a mirror held up to America itself. A story about violence and image, guilt and denial, race and celebrity. He doesn't run, he never really did. He walked into history, calm, slow, deliberate, and the world followed, unable to look away.